The first time I saw the grave that would change everything, the sky was a sheet of dull grey. The kind of grey that makes the world feel smaller, colder, like even the sun doesn't want to look at you. I was holding a small bouquet of white lilies, fingers stiff from the November wind, and my son Daniel walked a step ahead of me, kicking at the loose gravel on the path. He was quiet, too quiet for a 10-year-old boy. No complaints, no questions, just that slow, careful walk, like he was counting each step in his head. I told myself it was grief. Kids don't know how to handle funerals, how to handle death. But deep down, something had started to bother me weeks earlier, something I kept pushing away. We turned the corner by the tall, leaning oak tree, and the cemetery opened up in front of us. Neat rows of headstones, some old and cracked, some new and shiny, names carved deep and sharp. Daniel stopped. His shoulders tensed, like he could feel the weight of all those names pressing down on him. "Mum," he whispered, "can I go ahead? Alone?" I frowned. "Ahead where, honey?" "To Dad. I just want to talk to him for a minute, without you." The words twisted in my chest. My husband, Mark, had been gone for 6 months. Heart attack. Quick, brutal, no goodbye, no warning. One moment we were arguing about bills, the next he was on the kitchen floor and my hands were slippery with panic and 911 was too slow. I swallowed hard. "Okay," I said, "I'll catch up. Don't go far." Daniel nodded and took off down the narrow path between the graves, his small figure shrinking between the stones. I watched him for a moment, the lilies trembling in my hand, then started walking again, slower this time. The cold air bit at my cheeks. My boots crunched on the frozen ground. I didn't see the caretaker until he was right beside me. He stepped out from behind a row of graves, like he had been waiting there all along, tall, lean, maybe in his late 60s. His grey hair was pulled back at the nape, his face thin but sharp, the kind that notices everything. He wore an old brown coat and a cap pulled low, and his gloved hands were smudged with dirt. "Mrs. Harper?" he asked, his voice rough but steady. I stiffened. "Yes." "I'm Walter," he said. "Caretaker here. We met at the funeral. You probably don't remember." I didn't, or maybe I didn't want to. That day was a blur of faces and flowers and the weight of my own heartbeat. I just nodded, hugging the lilies tighter. He glanced past me, down the path where Daniel had disappeared between the stones. Something in his eyes changed. The lines on his forehead deepened. "You here for your husband?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "My son. He likes to come. It helps him." Walter's jaw tightened. He hesitated, like he was measuring each word before letting it go. "How often you come out here?" he asked. "Once a week, sometimes twice. Why?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer and lowered his voice. "Where's your boy now?" "With his father," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "At the grave." Walter shook his head, almost to himself. Then he reached out and grabbed my arm. The grip was firm, stronger than I expected. I sucked in a breath and looked up at him, ready to pull away, to tell him not to touch me. But his eyes, there was something raw there, fear, real fear, not for himself. "Stop," he said, his voice suddenly harsh, like gravel scraping metal. "Don't go any closer yet." "Excuse me?" I pulled back, but he didn't let go. "Watch," he said. "Watch what your son is really doing at the grave." My heart kicked against my ribs. Cold slid under my skin, deeper than the November wind. I followed his gaze, my eyes searching through the crooked rows of stone, past the angel statues and the faded flowers, until I saw Daniel. He was kneeling in front of Mark's headstone, just like always, small, hunched, his jacket pulled tight around him. Nothing strange, nothing dangerous. He was just a boy talking to his dead father. "What are you talking about?" I whispered. "He's just visiting." Walter's fingers dug into my sleeve. "Look closer," he said. A weak laugh slipped out of me. "Look, I don't know what you think you saw, but my son is fine. He's grieving. That's all. We don't need—" "Last week," Walter cut in, his voice low. "And the week before that. And the one before that, your boy came here alone. You know that?" My breath caught. "What?" He nodded slowly. "I keep track of who comes and goes. It's my job. Your son's been here more times than you think. At night, too." "No," I said. "That's not possible. I would know, I would—" But even as the words left my mouth, my mind flashed to the nights Daniel had woken up from nightmares, the mornings when his shoes were damp, his jacket still cold. I had chalked it up to sleepwalking, to childhood weirdness. A phase, something I didn't know how to fix, so I pretended it wasn't real. "You didn't see him," Walter went on quietly. "But I did." I swallowed hard. "See him do what?" Walter looked at me for a long moment, then slowly released my arm. The imprint of his grip burned through my coat. "Just watch," he said, "and don't make a sound." I turned back toward the grave, my pulse roaring in my ears. The world seemed to narrow, everything else fading away until it was just me, the caretaker, and my son kneeling by his father's name in stone. The wind died down. The cemetery went still. Then Daniel did something I had never seen him do before. Daniel's shoulders rose with a slow, shaky breath, and for a moment I thought he was just crying. His small hand lifted toward the gravestone, fingers trembling in the cold air. Then he leaned forward, not in grief, not in prayer, but with a strange, deliberate calm that didn't belong to a child. He placed his palm flat against the stone. At first nothing happened, just my son, kneeling in the brittle grass, touching his father's name like he always did. But then his head tilted to the side, like he was listening, not to me, not to the wind, to something else. Daniel's lips moved, whispering, soft, broken sounds I couldn't make out from where I stood. But it wasn't the way a child talks to a dead parent. It was steady, repetitive, like he was reciting something or answering someone. I took a step forward. Walter's hand shot out, gripping my coat sleeve again. "Don't," he hissed. "You'll spook him." "He's my son," I whispered fiercely. "I need to—" "You need to see," Walter cut in. "All the way, no interruptions." My chest tightened. Fear flickered through me, raw, confused, impossible. My son wasn't dangerous. He wasn't strange. He was grieving, hurting, trying to heal. But something in the way he knelt there, the stillness of him, the unnatural calm, it made my stomach twist. Daniel leaned closer to the grave, his face inches from the stone. His whispering grew louder, still too faint to understand, but rhythmic, almost like chanting. The sound of it carried across the empty cemetery in uneven swells, riding the cold breeze. My breath fogged the air. What is he saying?" I murmured. Walter's expression darkened. "You tell me." I swallowed. "He's never done this before." "He has," Walter said quietly. "You just haven't seen it. But I have." I shook my head. No, he wouldn't come here alone. He's a child." "Children grieve in ways adults can't imagine," Walter said. His voice softened, but the fear in it didn't. "But this isn't grief." A chill crawled up my spine. Daniel suddenly stopped whispering. His hand slid down the stone and he reached into his jacket pocket, slowly, purposefully. Then he pulled something out. My breath caught. A small metal object glinted between his fingers. "What is that?" I whispered. "A trowel," Walter answered. "A little gardening tool. He took it from the shed last week." My throat tightened. "Why would he—" Before I could finish, Daniel drove the trowel into the soil at the base of the gravestone. The soft thud of metal breaking earth echoed too loudly in the quiet, dead air. He dug once, twice, 3 times. Small, sharp strikes like he had done this before, like he knew exactly how deep he needed to go. "Oh my God," I breathed. He's digging." Walter nodded slowly. "That's what I've been trying to tell you." My pulse roared. Fear crawled under my skin like something alive. I wanted to run to him, grab his hand, pull him away from the grave, but my legs wouldn't move. I was rooted to the frozen ground, my heart pounding against my ribs as Daniel scraped through the dirt, his little hands staining brown, then darker. "What is he trying to do?" I whispered. Walter exhaled through his teeth. "You won't believe me if I tell you. Try me." He hesitated. Then, very quietly, he said, "He thinks your husband is trying to talk to him." The words landed like a punch. "No," I whispered. That's not possible. He's a rational boy. He doesn't believe in that kind of thing." Walter looked at me with tired eyes. Kids believe what they feel, not what they're taught. I stared at my son, still digging, his breath coming out in white, determined clouds. The wind tugged at his jacket. His hair fell over his face. He didn't stop, didn't hesitate, didn't look around to see if anyone was watching. He was entirely focused on the earth beneath him. A crack split the air. Sharp, too sharp. Daniel froze. Walter straightened beside me. "What was that?" I asked. Before he could answer, my son reached into the hole he had made. His small fingers curled around something buried beneath the soil, something solid, heavy. He pulled it out. My breath hitched. It wasn't a rock, it wasn't a root. It was a small wooden box, old, weathered, edges cracked, covered in dirt and mould. "Oh God," I whispered. Daniel held it in both hands, staring at it with a strange, reverent stillness. Then he set the trowel aside and brushed the dirt from the lid with slow, careful strokes. "He knows exactly what he's doing," Walter murmured. How did that get there?" My voice trembled. Walter's jaw tensed. "That's the question, isn't it?" Daniel lifted the box and pressed it against the gravestone like he was offering it to someone. His head bowed. His whispering returned, faster now, more urgent. I felt sick. "I have to stop him," I said, stepping forward. Walter stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "Not yet." "He's my child," I snapped, "and you'll traumatize him if you tear him away from whatever he's doing before we understand it." "I don't care," my voice cracked. "That box could be dangerous. It could have—" "Look," Walter said sharply. I looked. Daniel opened the box. The lid creaked. Inside, nestled in rotting fabric, was something that made my blood turn to ice. A folded piece of paper, but not just any paper. It was my husband's handwriting. Fresh, dark, impossible. Daniel reached for it, and that's when the ground beneath the gravestone shuddered. The earth moved, not like an animal burrowing, not like the frost settling, like something shifting, something alive. The earth trembled so softly at first that I wasn't sure if it was real or just my pulse hammering through my body. But then the shift came again, deeper this time, like the soil itself exhaled from somewhere below. Daniel didn't flinch. He held the letter in, his small fingers staring at it with a focus that wasn't natural for a child. I felt the wind die, as if the air around us had paused to listen. Walter swore under his breath and moved one step closer to my son, not blocking him, but bracing himself like he expected the ground to open. I could barely force the words out. "Daniel, honey, don't touch it." My voice barely carried, swallowed by the heaviness settling over the cemetery. But Daniel didn't look at me. His lips moved rapidly, whispering the same strange cadence as before, the same murmured responses, as if someone unseen was speaking to him and he was answering without hesitation. Then he unfolded the note, slowly, carefully, like it was a holy thing. The paper cracked faintly at the creases, brittle but unmistakably new, as if it had been written that morning and not buried underground for half a year. My heart pounded against my ribs as Daniel's eyes scanned the page. His breath caught, his hands shook, and then he whispered, barely audible, "Dad, I hear you. I'm here." I felt my knees weaken. "Daniel, please," I said louder this time, "give me the letter. Don't read anything else." He ignored me completely, as if my voice had been turned down like a radio dial. His attention was locked on that note. Walter grabbed my wrist. "Don't rush him," he whispered fiercely. "If this is what I think it is, any sudden movement could make it worse." "Worse," I snapped. "He's a child with a letter from a man who's been dead for 6." The ground trembled again, cutting me off. This time it wasn't subtle. The headstone vibrated. The dirt cracked, a thin line splitting the frozen soil beside the grave like a small, jagged mouth opening. Daniel didn't look up. He simply spoke. Not to me, not to Walter, to someone beneath us. "I found it," he said softly. "Just like you told me. I'm not scared anymore." My skin crawled. "Told him," I whispered. "Who told him? Mark is dead." Walter didn't look at me. His gaze was fixed on the grave. "Kids hear things we don't," he muttered. "Sometimes it's imagination. Sometimes it ain't." A sharp crack rippled across the ground. Daniel's head snapped up, like someone had called his name from below, and then he said words that made my stomach twist violently. "I'll finish it, I promise." "Finish what?" I gasped. Daniel refolded the letter and slipped it into his pocket with slow precision. Then he reached into the wooden box again and pulled out something I couldn't immediately understand, something small and metallic, rusted around the edges. A key, old, heavy, ornate. He held it in both hands like it was fragile, like it was precious. Walter stepped forward, but Daniel suddenly jerked the key away from him, his expression sharp, defensive, an expression no 10-year-old should ever have to wear. Walter froze. "Easy," he whispered. "We're not here." "To hurt you, son?" Daniel shook his head. "You can't help," he said. "Only I can do it." "Do what?" I pleaded. Daniel looked right at me, for the first time since we arrived, but his eyes weren't my son's eyes anymore. They were distant, focused somewhere far beyond the living world. "Dad needs me," he said simply. "He's trapped." My throat closed. Trapped where? Daniel turned toward the gravestone and pressed the key against the cold marble surface. Nothing happened. No glow, no sound. Just the quiet scrape of metal touching stone. But he didn't stop. He tried again, pressing harder, pushing the key along the carved letters of Mark's name, like he was searching for something invisible. "Daniel," I said, stepping forward before Walter could stop me. "Please stop. Your father is gone. You don't have to do this anymore." Daniel's voice came out in a whisper so hollow it barely sounded human. "Yes, I do." The ground shuddered again, harder this time, and Daniel lost his balance, falling to one knee. The key clattered onto the stone and landed in the dirt. He reached for it immediately, frantic. "Don't touch it," Walter said sharply, but Daniel was already grabbing it, clutching it to his chest. Then something else happened, something that made the world tilt. The gravestone shifted. Not much, just a slight movement, like something underneath was pushing upward. My scream got stuck in my throat. Daniel didn't scream. He smiled. A small, trembling smile that chilled me to the core. "He's waking up," he whispered. Walter grabbed my arm so tightly I winced. "We have to get him away from that stone," he said. "Now!" But before either of us could move, Daniel stood, lifted the key high in the air, and drove it down into the crack in the earth. The ground responded instantly. This time, it didn't tremble. It growled, a deep, low vibration that rolled through the cemetery like thunder trapped underground. Frosted dirt crumbled. The crack widened. The headstone lurched. And from somewhere far too deep below us, something knocked. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. My vision blurred. My knees buckled. Everything in me screamed to run, but my son was inches from that grave, and I couldn't move away from him. Daniel leaned toward the ground. "Dad?" he whispered. The knocks came again, louder, closer, wrong. Walter whispered, "Jesus, help us." But God wasn't anywhere near that place. He wasn't anywhere near what happened next, when the soil at the base of the grave finally broke open. The soil split with a wet, tearing sound that didn't belong in the world of the living, and for a moment everything around us fell silent. No wind, no distant cars, no rustling leaves, just that gaping wound in the earth, staring up at us like an open eye. Daniel peered into it with a calm that froze my blood, his small fingers clutching the rusted key like it was the only thing, tethering him to reality. A thick, cold draught rose from the darkness below, smelling of damp stone and something older, earth that hadn't seen the light in decades. I took a shaky step forward, ready to grab my son and drag him away, but Daniel lifted his hand in a slow, eerie gesture, as though telling me to wait. "He's coming," he whispered, and those two words cleaved through me like a blade. Walter muttered something under his breath, maybe a prayer, maybe a curse, before gripping my coat to stop me from lunging forward. "Let him move first," he whispered hoarsely. "If you interrupt whatever he's doing, we won't understand the danger." But I didn't care about understanding. I cared about the way the earth kept splitting wider, the way the headstone trembled like something underneath was pushing upward with impossible strength. Daniel crouched closer and reached a hand toward the opening, as if greeting someone. My scream tore free before I could stop it. "Daniel, no!" He didn't react. His eyes were unfocused, distant, as if he were seeing someone only he could see. Then a sound drifted up from the darkness, a soft scrape at first, like fingers brushing dirt, then another, then a third. I staggered backward, choking on my breath. "It can't be," I whispered. "It can't be him." Walter's face twisted with disbelief and fear. "Bodies don't move like that," he said, "not after 6 months in the ground." But then a voice floated up from that black hollow, a voice that sounded like Mark's, hoarse, choked, wrong. "Daniel." My son's breath hitched and his shoulder shuddered with relief. "Dad," he whispered, crawling closer to the crack. "I'm here. I brought the key, just like you said." My knees nearly gave out. I clawed at Walter's arm, desperate. "That's not Mark," I cried. "It can't be him, that's—" Another knock came from the depths, harder this time, so hard it rattled the stones around us. Daniel gasped. "He's stuck," he said breathlessly. "He told me he can't breathe down there. He told me the key will help him get out. Mum, he said he's still alive." The grief that had carved itself into my bones twisted into something sharper. Terror. "That is not your father," I said, the words trembling out of my mouth. "Mark is dead, Daniel. He died in our kitchen. I held him. I felt him go. Whatever that voice is, it's lying to you." Daniel shook his head violently, tears spilling down his cheeks. "No, you're wrong. Dad said you wouldn't believe me. He told me not to tell you at first. He said you wouldn't understand." His voice cracked, but his resolve didn't. He reached down into the darkness, stretching his arm as far as it would go. "Dad," he whispered desperately, "take my hand." I lunged forward, but Walter grabbed me around the waist, holding me back with surprising strength. "Let go!" I screamed, thrashing against him. "He's going to fall in! He's going to—" The earth heaved again, and Daniel's hand disappeared into the crack. I screamed his name, but he didn't look back. His face lit with a brief, frantic hope. "I feel him!" he cried. "He's cold, but he's here. Mum, he's here." Then everything changed in an instant. Daniel's expression twisted, not with relief, but with pain. His arm jerked violently as something yanked him downward. He gasped, his eyes going wide with terror. "Mum!" I tore free from Walter's grip and lunged, grabbing my son's other arm just as he was being dragged toward the widening hole. Walter dropped to his knees beside me, wrapping both arms around Daniel's waist, pulling with everything he had. A roar, deep, unnatural, furious, vibrated up from the earth. The soil beneath the headstone buckled. Something inside that darkness pulled with a force no human hand could mimic. Daniel screamed, high and raw, the kind of sound a child makes only when something truly horrifying has its grip on them. I tightened my hold, my fingernails digging into his jacket. "Let go!" I shrieked into the hole. "Let him go!" The thing below pulled harder. Daniel's legs slid across the dirt, his sneakers scraping against the edge of the grave. "Mum, it hurts!" Walter shouted. "Pull!" and we both heaved backward with everything our bodies could muster. Another roar tore through the ground, rattling the frozen grass. Then suddenly, the force vanished. Whatever was holding him let go. The momentum sent all three of us flying backward, crashing into the cold earth behind us. Daniel curled into my chest, shaking violently, sobbing uncontrollably. I clutched him, breathless, heart exploding with relief and terror. Walter scrambled to his feet, staring at the grave. The crack was still there, still open, still breathing that cold, fetid air, but the knocking had stopped. The voice had stopped, the movement had stopped. Daniel lifted his trembling hand. It was streaked with dark, wet soil and something else beneath his nails. Something pale, something that looked like skin. "Mom," he whispered through his sobs. Dad tried to pull me in." Daniel's fingers shook as he stared at the dirt beneath his nails, his lips trembling around the words he could barely force out, and for a moment all I could do was hold him, my own body shaking so hard my teeth clicked. I wanted to tell him it was okay, that he had imagined it, that there was some rational explanation, but when I looked up and saw the grave, saw the split earth still yawning open, exhaling that awful cold, I knew there was nothing rational about what had just tried to take my son. Walter stood a few feet away, breathing hard, his shoulders hunched like he was bracing for another attack from below. But the ground had gone still. The headstone sat crooked now, slightly tilted, like whatever was beneath it had shifted and then settled. "We're leaving," I said, my voice hoarse but firm as I pulled Daniel to his feet. He clung to me, shaking. "Mum, he's angry," he sobbed into my coat. "He said I failed him. He said I promised." My stomach twisted. "You don't owe him anything," I whispered fiercely, even as a traitorous part of me remembered Mark's laugh, his warm hands, the way he used to scoop Daniel up and spin him around the kitchen. Walter walked toward us, his boots crunching the brittle grass, his gaze flicking between my pale face and Daniel's ruined hands. "You need to get him out of here," he said quietly. "Tonight, now, and you don't bring him back. Ever." "What was that?" I demanded, my voice rising. "What did we just fight with? Because that wasn't my husband." Walter looked back at the grave for a long moment, his jaw tight. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "when folks die fast like that, they don't go easy. They leave pieces behind, regrets, secrets, anger, and sometimes those pieces stick to places they shouldn't." I shook my head. "No, it was talking to him. It knew his name, it knew mine. It sounded like Mark." "Maybe it was him," Walter said, "or maybe it was just using his voice. That's the problem with the dead when they get restless. They'll say anything to drag the living down with them." Daniel whimpered at that, pressing his face harder into my side. I wrapped my arm around him and glared at Walter. "You knew," I said. "You knew something was wrong and you didn't call the police. You didn't call me." His eyes hardened. "I did what I could. I told your boy to stop coming. I locked the gates at night. But grief makes people clever, and kids, they find ways in. What pulled at him down there? It's been building, ever since your husband went into the ground." A wave of nausea crashed over me. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Walter's face softened with something almost like guilt. "Because I kept hoping it was just his imagination, that it'd pass. But when he started digging, that's when I knew it had gone too far. That box shouldn't be there. Nothing new should be buried with the dead." My gaze snapped to the ground where the wooden box had been. It was still there, half knocked over in the chaos, its lid hanging open, its inside smeared with dirt. But the key was gone, still clutched in Daniel's fist. I gently pried it from his grip, ignoring his whimper of protest. "No," he sobbed. "Dad needs that. He said it opens the door." "There are doors that should never be opened," I said, slipping the key into my coat pocket, feeling its cold weight press against my ribs. "We're done with this, Daniel. Do you hear me? We are done." He shook his head, tears streaking his cheeks. "He'll be mad. He said if I stop, he'll be stuck there forever." "Good," Walter muttered quietly. I shot him a sharp look, but didn't argue. My son was listening. I forced my voice to soften. "If your dad loves you, he wouldn't ask you to crawl into a grave after him," I said gently. "He would want you safe, alive, here with me, not down there." Daniel hiccuped, swallowing his sobs. "But he said you wouldn't understand. He said you let him die." The words hit me like a slap. My mouth fell open. "What?" Daniel stared at the ground, ashamed. "He told me," he whispered. "He said you could have saved him if you called sooner. He said you waited. He said you wanted him gone." My vision blurred with tears that burned hot and furious. "That's not true," I rasped. "I tried. I did everything I could. My voice broke. Walter stepped closer, his tone low but firm. "Whatever's talking to you from down there doesn't get to rewrite what happened in your house," he told Daniel. "Your daddy's body came through here on a stretcher, same as all the others. He didn't walk, he didn't talk, he didn't scratch at his coffin. Whatever you're hearing now, it's not the man you loved." Daniel squeezed his eyes shut, covering his ears, shaking his head like he was trying to empty it out. "Stop!" he cried. "Stop, stop, stop, he can hear you. He said he can hear everything we say up here." I swallowed hard. "Then let him hear this," I said, turning toward the crooked stone, my voice shaking but loud. "You don't get my son. Whatever you are, whatever you used to be, you don't get him." The words felt foolish, weak, floating over cold marble and dead grass. But then a faint vibration rippled under our feet, like the grave itself was growling at my defiance. I didn't wait to see if it would answer. I grabbed Daniel's hand and started walking, dragging him along if I had to. Walter walked beside us until we reached the rusted iron gate. Just before we left, he leaned in close. "You still have that key?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "Don't lose it, don't use it, and don't let the boy near it again." "What is it?" I whispered. "What does it open?" Walter's eyes flicked back to my husband's grave. "If I'm lucky," he said, "nothing at all. If I'm not—" He trailed off. "Lock your doors tonight, Mrs. Harper, and if your boy starts talking to somebody who's not there, don't assume it's a harmless friend." The drive home was a blur of cold air and the sound of Daniel's quiet sniffling from the passenger seat. He wouldn't look at me. His shoulders were hunched, his hands tucked under his thighs like he didn't trust them. I kept glancing at him, searching his face for my child, the boy who used to laugh at cartoons and beg for ice cream. All I saw was someone haunted. When we finally pulled into the driveway, the house looked wrong. Too dark, too still, like it knew we were bringing something inside that didn't belong in the world of the living. I locked the front door behind us, then the back door, then every window I could reach, my heart pounding faster with each click. Daniel watched me from the hallway, his eyes hollow. "It won't matter," he said softly. "If he wants to come in, he doesn't need doors." I forced a smile I didn't feel. "Well, maybe it'll make me feel better," I said. "Come on, let's get you cleaned up." I took him to the bathroom and scrubbed the dirt from his hands, trying not to gag when I saw flecks of something pale under his nails. Maybe it was just my imagination. Maybe it was just old bone, rotten wood, God knows what else. But every time I blinked, I saw that grave, that crack, that impossible voice. When he was finally in bed, exhausted and silent, I sat at the edge of his mattress and brushed his hair back from his forehead. "If you hear anything tonight," I murmured, "anything at all, you wake me up. You don't go anywhere alone. Do you hear me, Daniel?" His eyes opened, slow and heavy. For a moment, just a moment, I saw my little boy again. "What if he needs me?" he whispered. "What if he's scared?" My chest ached. "The dead don't get to ask the living for comfort," I said gently. "Not like that. Not through graves and keys and letters in the dirt. If he loves you, he'll let you go." Daniel stared at me for a long time, then finally nodded, though I could tell he didn't believe me. I turned off his lamp and stood in the doorway for a moment, listening to his breathing. When I finally went downstairs, the house felt too large, too empty, every shadow stretching longer than it should. I pulled the rusted key from my pocket and set it on the kitchen table, staring at it under the overhead light. It looked harmless, ordinary, just metal and rust. But as I watched, I could have sworn it moved, just slightly, like it had taken a breath. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. I sat at the kitchen table with the rusted key in front of me, like it was a loaded weapon, every light in the house blazing as if brightness alone could keep the shadows from crawling in. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. The house creaked in slow, restless stretches, and every sound made my heart leap into my throat. Around midnight, the temperature dropped so sharply I could see my breath in the warm kitchen, the air frosting out as though winter had slipped under the doors. I wrapped my arms around myself, staring at the key. Something was wrong with it, more wrong than before. The rust along its edges seemed darker now, almost wet, and the teeth of the key had a faint smear of earth that hadn't been there earlier, like someone or something had dragged it through the ground. I reached toward it, hesitated, then pulled my hand back like it might bite. Upstairs, the hallway floor creaked. My pulse slammed against my ribs. Daniel! I pushed away from the table and rushed up the stairs, gripping the railing with shaking hands. When I reached his bedroom door, it was half open, light spilling out from inside. "Daniel," I whispered. No answer. I pushed the door open slowly, breath caught in my throat. His bed was empty, sheets thrown back, pillow on the floor. My stomach dropped, a cold freefall. "Daniel!" I darted down the hall, checking the bathroom, my bedroom, the linen closet. Nothing. Panic clawed its way up my throat as I ran back downstairs, nearly tripping over my own feet. The front door was still locked, the windows were latched. He couldn't have left the house. Then I heard it. A faint whisper, not a voice exactly, more like a breath pressed against the walls. I froze, listening. "Mum!" My heart jolted. "Daniel?" The whisper came again, barely there, like it floated from somewhere far away. "Mum, I'm sorry." I followed the sound into the living room, every instinct screaming at me, every nerve stretched thin. As I crossed the room, the whisper grew louder, broken, trembling, desperate. "Mum, I didn't want to. He said I had to." Tears pricked my eyes. "Daniel, where are you?" The whisper slipped under my feet, under the floorboards, rising like cold air from a basement that shouldn't have been open. My gaze snapped toward the hallway. The basement door was cracked open an inch. I knew I hadn't touched it. I knew I'd locked it earlier. The house breathed around me. "Daniel!" I pushed the door open, and a rush of frigid air billowed up the stairs, carrying with it the unmistakable smell of damp soil, the same smell from the grave. My hands shook as I flicked on the stairway light. The bulb flickered weakly, casting long, trembling shadows down the wooden steps. Halfway down, I saw him. Daniel sat on the concrete floor, knees pulled to his chest, arms wrapped around himself. His eyes were wide and glazed, fixed on the far wall where the shadows seemed unnaturally thick. "Honey," I whispered, racing down the steps and dropping to my knees beside him. "What are you doing down here? Why didn't you wake me?" He didn't look at me. "He called me," he whispered, voice hollow. "He said I made him angry. He said I was supposed to finish what he asked." My skin prickled. "No one called you," I said firmly, cupping his face. "It's not your dad. Your dad is gone." Daniel's eyes finally met mine, filled with heartbreak and fear. "He said you were lying." My chest tightened. "Sweetheart, he's trying to hurt you. Whatever that voice is, it's not him." Daniel shook his head, sobbing. "But he said he's cold. He said he's in the dark. He said he needs the key to get out." I froze. "Daniel, did you take the key?" He nodded slowly. My breath burst out in a sharp, panicked exhale. "Where is it?" His gaze drifted to the far corner of the basement. The shadows there seemed to pulse. I stood slowly, pulling him up, with me. "We're going upstairs," I whispered. "Now." But as we turned toward the stairs, a deep groan trembled through the basement floor, vibrating up through our feet like something shifting under the foundation. The concrete cracked, just a hairline fracture, snaking toward us. Daniel gripped my arm, trembling violently. "Mum," he whispered. "It followed me." The fracture widened with a jagged snap. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The house shuddered, the lights flickering wildly. "Run!" I grabbed Daniel and shoved him toward the stairs. He scrambled up as the crack split wider, a low growl rising from the darkness. A voice, Mark's voice, echoed up through the floor, warping into something monstrous. "Daniel, come back!" My scream tore out of me. "Leave him alone!" The basement light exploded overhead with a sharp pop, plunging us into darkness. I shoved Daniel through the door and slammed it behind us, locking it, pushing a heavy chair under the handle as the floor below thrashed like something trapped was trying to break free. Daniel sobbed into my arms as the house trembled, the air filled with banging from beneath our feet. 3 knocks at a time. Always 3, always getting closer. "Mum?" Daniel whispered, voice breaking. "He said he's going to come inside." I held him tighter, tears streaming down my face, whispering over and over, "He can't have you, he can't have you." But even as I said it, the knocking moved, away from the basement, travelling beneath the floorboards, moving toward the living room, toward the hallway, toward the stairs. Then it stopped, and from outside Daniel's bedroom door, a soft, familiar voice called through the darkness, perfectly calm. "Danny, open the door, it's Dad."